and we need to try to figure out how to connect those. So we can use those buildings within the community to create these innovation centers, and we can use the buildings with actually this right now. Yeah. Yes. 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 Sorry. No, you're right. So that was really.
Can you repeat what she said for the rest of the? I don't know that anyone can hear what she said, other than your table. If there was something to add.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, capturing this correctly, but it was a combination of emptying the digital space and making these connections and centers, but also this is what I got, physical space, and looking at some examples from Guatemala and Mexico and how they can be out there to bridge social and economic lines, just to promote that digital mobility and social equality. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Group 2. Who's your spokesperson?
Hello, my name is Simon Ross. I'm very senior architect, and we're talking about autonomous, how the city gets ready for autonomous vehicles, which is, I think, a key aspect of becoming a smart city. And it's one of the big areas that are already growing. We've already seen Tesla rolling out their semi-autonomous vehicles. Those are growing today, so it's something that's here, it's not coming, it's here. And we need to be taking steps to get ready. So the first aspect we looked at was the legal aspects. Today, I think in Kansas and Missouri, we don't have a lot of legislation around how autonomous vehicles will be managed, how they'll be run, how insurance is going to be managed for those, not the legislation for when you get into an accident, who has the liability for an autonomous vehicle. So I think that's a big area that needs to start being addressed now for managing the move towards autonomous vehicles. Next, we start talking about some of the enablers and technology around enabling the autonomous vehicles that are coming, that are here. The type of infrastructure that you're going to need to enable the autonomous driving, more than just your current networks. They're going to need a lot more granular information, localized information. And a lot of that data can't be going from your ISP to a server in California and coming all the way back to Kansas, when you need really real-time processing and information to manage these autonomous cars. So looking at low latency, local hosting of information is key to being able to allow this to operate safely within the city. Looking at what sort of vehicle providers and pilots are going to be allowed to come and start driving this in the city is important. Who are going to be your manufacturers, who you're going to sign agreements with, and how are you actually going to start making your legislation. You can't just kind of work from a blank slate. You probably need a pilot to look at the impact in the city, look at how it's really working, and start to drive all of those other areas. The next area, aside from the pure technology, is what are the business drivers that bring it into the city? Sure, you've got the technology, sure, we know everyone's doing it, but how is the city really going to benefit from this? Is it going to, are the business drivers the economy it enables through more efficient businesses, more efficient use of more roads, or are there more direct revenue streams that can be taken from it? Things like the I-70 technology improvement project, which could be looking at sustainable technology or sustainable business drivers that could self-fund the development and improvement of those type of roads. And the other technology driver is energy availability and sustainability. What type of energy systems are we going to be using? We've got electric systems, gas-powered systems, fuel cells. I know KCP&L already rolling out their electric vehicle chargers all throughout the city, and that's a good step forward towards that. But really, which way do we see the city going in terms of supporting these technologies and these types of energies? When you're looking at the sharing economy, you may have someone picking up a car and driving it 2 blocks down. Being driven 2 blocks down by their automated car and then being picked up by the next person. And is that car going to have enough energy? How do you take it off the system to recharge it and put it back on the system to be used in the sharing economy? Then we started talking about some existing projects that are interesting and applicable to this. The Integrated Roadways project, which is looking at precast railway and pavement chunks that already have built-in sensors and Wi-Fi availability that could be used to kind of gather data about how it's being used and additional connectivity. I mentioned the I-70 road to tomorrow, and how that can be used to generate revenue for self-sustainability. And the other big area that could help to drive pilots would be Kansas City's application to the DOT global initiative. And if they get onto that, it could certainly help to drive the take-up. And the next thing we started to get is it's a topic that can drive a lot of speculation. But what are the long-term impacts of a move towards automation? I mean, it can go so many different directions, and we were talking about 100 years ago, if you were talking about the move to the vehicle from a horse, what do you think would have happened to your horse in Kansas City if you drove in to Kansas City, you rode into Kansas City on your horse today, and how would that be taken? And try to apply the same mindset to electric vehicles in the future. How are all the industry and revenue streams around the current self-driven vehicles, things more than just the insurance companies, but traffic violations, fines, parking management, all of those type of things that exist around the self-driven industry, how do those evolve, or do they go away completely in the future of the automated vehicles, and what are they replaced by, and what are the new areas of focus in the automated vehicle arena? And some of the other benefits, like reducing drunk driving and DUIs and things like that. And then I'll finish off by just saying the focus for now that we should be doing, the steps that we should be doing now to make it happen is looking at zoning for automated cars so that you can start to phase it into the cities, whether that's lanes, whether it's areas that automated vehicles are allowed. Starting to get the pilot projects on so you can start working on the legislation aspects, start drafting those bills and figuring out how we can enable it in the city. And then also looking at other industries more than just cars, things like logistics and trucks and how those are transporting goods and drones and all of those other aspects more than just cars. So those are the highlights of our topic here. I think
So
thank you.
So we had quite a bit of discussion that on something that isn't captured there, which is what seconds. When does it start? Which is what is the proper role of autonomous vehicles? As long as we're going to spend a bunch of money, there are many places that do transportation much better than we do already. Mass transit in Europe. So just because we can doesn't mean we should. And the question is, where should autonomous vehicles go? Where should we do more conventional mass transit?
Great, thank you. Sure again. All right, table 3.
Awesome. Hi folks. So we explored, what did we explore? We explored how the city can promote citizens to build apps to promote and improve mobility and transit within the city. And I think one thing we noticed at the outset was it seems there's been a profound mind shift among cities pretty universally, from one in which maybe 10 years ago cities treated data sets and other information as proprietary, sacrosanct, and not available to the public, and you had to fight and scream in order to get hold of those data sets, even if your motivation was free, better public service and use of public transit. Now it seems every city is throwing its data sets at the people to do whatever they can and will do to improve public transit and mobility. So I think that's a good step forward, and it looks like there's lots of experiments around the world. So we broke our conceptions down into, I guess, 3 categories. One is empowering citizens who are already able, have the tech tools to build the apps. What can the city do in that context? The other is, how can the city empower and encourage those who are not really tech savvy to participate in the building of applications and tool sets, and otherwise take advantage of those tool sets. And the third category, which we didn't really address, was how can we encourage corporations to play a significant purpose in the creation of apps for the public good. But in the first area, empowering citizens to build apps, I think they're all pretty self-evident at this point. I think almost every city worth its salt has already recognized that we need to have city-sponsored hackathons and open up data sets and let the games begin. Let the citizens do what they can. Lots of great examples. One particularly good example that Kari introduced us to was something called Ride With Me, a Chicago app that was built to help kids who are afraid to travel through potentially dangerous areas to harness social media and GPS to figure out ways to travel with friends across the city. Let's see. There was some talk about cities working to promote citizen technological competency and the use of data sets, because it doesn't take much to learn how to use those data sets and build a few scripts to build some interesting apps and change the life within your city or even within your own neighborhood. We didn't dig down to the hyper-local level very much, but most of the apps, to a large extent, are really built for the upperly mobile, richer, whiter neighborhoods within the city. There was some sense that we need to figure out how to bring tools to the marginalized constituencies around the city. Let's see. For those citizens who are otherwise not tech savvy, the suggestion was that there should be more ability to allow them to participate in the crowdsourcing of information, build the apps and let it be populated by those citizens, all the citizens, those who are both tech savvy, those who are not, to share information, real-time information about potholes, about broken lights, real-time information about bus location, etc., where GPS is not available. Human sensors, which I think implicates a lot of profound legal and personal data issues, but that's certainly another tool that the city could experiment with to allow for better information and real-time data across the city. We didn't really talk about how to encourage corporations to play a more vital role, but we had a couple thoughts on that, and maybe I'll talk about projects and prototypes. A couple of the projects we thought about one was the thought that maybe cities could create real-time, real-space device labs. These device labs would be places where a city and the corporations would populate the location with all the devices that anyone can use, so that anyone who's building an app for the city can test them across the entire platform, across all the generations of iPhone, across all the generations of Android, across not just the smartphone technology, but just traditional mobile phone devices, across all the every different software built on those phones, so that everyone in the city who's got a mobile device is able to use the apps as effectively as possible. One other thought, every city around the world is trying to do something in this regard. Thought is maybe we should convene perhaps a global demo day. Oh, I'm done. Oh. I didn't know we were time. Global demo day, scour and scrape and get the best of breeds for all the apps around the world, so that no city should have dominion over all the best apps without sharing with the rest of the world. Transit app to get people to work and get students to school would be a nice quick demo, a nice prototype to build. And over the use and retention of data sets.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
So we're going to move right into our next panel when we're done with this. If I can get our next, we've got one more. But I want the three people, Eric, Bob, and Joe, you guys want to make your way to the chairs at the front, then we will move right into the next session after we hear report out from Table 4. And who is delivering that? John, thank you. Rick.
Thank you, Aaron. Our question was, how do we encourage alternative forms of transportation, the things we've been talking about for a day and a half? It seems to us in our discussion that it all begins with making decisions about what we want to do, what we want to be like as a city, and so that's a policy decision. And why would we even consider alternative forms of transportation? One is that it's clear that the solutions that we've been building and operating really don't work well for everybody, right? And Kansas City is a good example of that. Maybe traditional transit works okay in the urban core, but what about Olathe? What about Lenexa and north of the river and Blue Springs and Lee Summit. Really doesn't work so well.
And
Another,
Hayes,
beg your pardon?
and Hayes, and that's not quite Kansas City.
And another reason is closing the equity gap. We kind of talked about today, but when there's a huge economic opportunity in South Overland Park and folks here in the city can't access it easily, then does it become a civil rights kind of question and or environmental justice? And is that a basis for a policy shift? Or perhaps it's simply, what do we want to be like in the future? What is the urban form? Do we want to continue to have the kind of urban form that we're all familiar with here in Kansas City? And where do words like sustainability and green and so forth come into being? Starts with policy. And as technology people, we're not in charge of policy, but how could we affect it? So, to follow on with that, the whole Smart Cities initiative is important in policy because as Kansas City is showing all of us that there is a way to affect decision makers, and anybody that was at the reception last night, and here's Mayor James, who's a lawyer, knows nothing about technology, but by golly, for whatever reason, he is buying into the technology. So it's our job then to bridge the gap from the bunch of good ideas, great concepts that are part of the city's challenge grant application, the whole concept, and turning that into the reality that that we need to accomplish the alternative form of transit. Okay, so much for the entree. The question we ask ourselves is what does the public really want and perhaps need, and how do we find that out? Well, the suggestions were to ask the people through various forms of survey, perhaps use social media, social network media to find out more, so that the solutions we come up with are ones that people will actually use and take advantage of. Another question is, how do we serve the lower density parts of Kansas City? I would suppose that, I don't know, 15, maybe 20% of the metropolitan area's population is in what we refer to as the urban core, where we have densities and urban fabric that lend themselves to traditional forms of transit. So that means that 80% of us are in this part of the city where it doesn't work. How do we change the mindset that allows us to move to these microtransit kinds of transportation, as an example, that don't fit into what we know about as institutions? By golly, there's labor issues and there's legal questions and so forth. How do we adapt those good ideas that are out there that may not work as solutions? An example was brought up. Uber is fine, right? It's flexible and being demand-based, it really fills a niche, but it's not as inexpensive as transit services are today. So how do we move to underwrite the cost of that so that it is affordable, so that these alternatives are really viable options for people who can't afford to pay $8 or $10 per ride and so forth. Then finally, as my time is up, we really need to do a better job of looking at the transportation system as a whole and not individual things. And we're doing that, and we've been doing that in the industry for years, but using bicycles and car sharing and dynamic ride sharing that somebody mentioned, the connected vehicles, all of that to make our transportation system better. Maybe not in one big bang, but stage these things, try prototypes, what works, learn from others and so forth. Not an easy task, but it's certainly an interesting process that we're getting into. Look forward to talking more about it.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you all. Those great report outs. We're going to move right directly into our next set of presentations. We have a few different, I think, really interesting perspectives here in our panel. We have students from Kansas City, Missouri, of the core city of the metro area. Eric Roach, the city's chief data officer. And so I have to kind of think about the city making its data available and in terms of its commitment to open data. How do you make that data available in a way that can used for regional apps? Because data interoperability between cities is really key. Bob Bennett, on the other end of the panel, is also with Kansas City, Missouri. Excuse me, our chief innovation officer here. About 6 weeks on the job.
Something like that.
And so thinking, both internally, city processes, how do you take the projects and things Kansas City, Missouri is working on and optimize, but also spread those things throughout the region, because from a national and international standpoint, people don't care that much if innovations in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas, or the next Early Summit. And Joe Bearden has a number of different hats over the past 4 years, and has a really unique perspective on regionalism. First as the mayor of Kansas City, Kansas, where he forged a close relationship with Mayor Sly James in Kansas City, Missouri, on a number of different initiatives. Then moved over to KCATA, which is the Regional Transportation Authority, and did a lot of work integrating transit systems across jurisdictions, and is now getting ready to take leadership of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. So thinking about regionalism from a private sector business perspective. So did all of you see how this shook out the last time, or do I need to go over kind of what we're hoping to do here? Basically, we want to get it back into small groups within 15 minutes. We have a prompt question here. What I'd like you to do is, one, give some initial thoughts on that question, but what we're really trying to do is get to 3, 4, or 5 questions that we organize tables around. So this may be one of them, but feel free to throw out other questions. Carrie will record those around regionalism. Other people can tweet them at us. You may give you a tool, not sure. If you want to email, if you want to raise hands, we'll give some time for that so that we can get to a list of 4 or 5 questions that we then break into small groups on. So the how we innovation ecosystem embraces the entire metropolitan area, all the municipal, county jurisdictions, that is traditional government policy. Eric, would you like to start?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brad.